come on, let me go. It's my turn next.
No, Mom said it's my turn.
But, no, okay. You get the good controller, but I get to go now.
Do I get the Rumble Pack or the Mad Cats?
You'll have the Mad Cats and like it.
Wow.
Or if you can't play nice, I'm taking the game away.
Fine.
I'm your Papa Abbott Pete, folks. Welcome back to Recorder on the Wall, where apparently my two panelists are still fighting over video games here.
But Father Abbott...
Don't make me put you on kitchen duty.
Yes, Father Abbott.
Fine. You say so.
So, if you haven't already guessed by our entrance, and by the way, that's Matthias and Braden.
Hello.
Quite.
No KD this week, but we'll wait through. We are covering the Redwall video games, which is definitely a sentence. When I started this podcast, I never thought I'd say. So, if you haven't gone through our back catalog in a while, or you don't remember when we first put this out, yeah, folks, we originally interviewed Soma Games all the way back in the Halcyon year before the Dark Times, in 2018, I think. October 2018. Some of the original game producers, and then one of the game voice actresses. But we are finally getting around to discussing this game instead of Summer Food. We'll get to that. And it's going to be a shorter episode than normal. Mostly that's on me than anything else. And let me tell you the tale of when tech support happens to the people who do IT for their living, aka me.
Ooh.
Yeah, sometimes you can be maddening for when there is a problem and you don't know how to fix it. So I have attempted to play Lost Legends of Redwall Act 1 3 times now. Once when I first bought it, like in winter of 2018. Once after that, and somehow my save... And the first game was fine. I didn't get very far. More. Then once after that, where I discovered my save file was gone. And once most recently for this episode where the game kept crashing and my save file was gone. Although I can't really blame the save file thing because I'm now on a different system. So I'm not gonna hold the game responsible for that.
It's the cloud's fault.
Sure, yeah.
Sure, we'll go with that. So, this game first came out in, like I said, in September 2018. It is on the platforms of generally Steam, the Xbox One game service, and PlayStation 4. Although I think the newer, don't quote me on this, but I want to say the newer Xbox and PlayStation 5 can handle this too. And probably through the Microsoft Game Pass through PC, but, Steam did for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I do remember the preview when this was coming out, and we got our first, concepts art and everything else, and which we'll talk about in a sense. So, a lot of questions like why on people's minds, rather, is why did it take so long to get a video game? Because Redwall seems like it's pretty fertile ground to make a video game.
Well, and we grew up playing, or we grew up reading it, so we're rich enough to play it now.
And I only have pieces and rumors on this, so take everything I'm about to say with a massive grain of salt. But my thought is, I think Brian resisted it for as long as he could.
I heard rumblings, unsubstantiated, but that he was very much against the whole turn Redwall into a video game or any adaptation that he directly okay. He did the Nelvana series, and that was about it. So make of that what you...
The audiobooks, but he had a direct hand in those.
I see audiobooks as an extension of the primary books. It's like books plus. It's not necessarily, quote unquote, an adaptation.
No.
Fair. That's fair. So, I mean, I can't blame Brian for being protective of his franchise in the slightest. I mean, he's hardly the first author to do so. If you want to go back to a more common example for us older millennials, Calvin and Hobbes was huge in its time. But
yeah.
that writer fought his own syndicate long and hard to keep it just contained to only the comic strip and a very limited line of products.
Yeah, Bill Watterson was very much I am not turning this into Garfield.
Yeah.
And
Well, you see what we get. We get tacky stickers on the back of pickup trucks.
which have nothing he has not authorized and doesn't make a profit from.
Exactly.
And Garfield is, well, Garfield. Jim, yeah. I mean, there's a lot you can say about Jim Davis, but he made that comic strip to make money. He said it as much. He has said as much. So.
And he did an absolutely fantastic job. And you know what? I had my hands on some Garfield books yesterday that came back and was shelving them and flipped through. And yeah, it's not like super anything. It's funny. I still laughed.
They occasionally get a smile out of me, but it's not like I watched any of the new Garfield cartoons or the live-action movies that Bill Murray expressed public regret over. So, sort of, in Zombieland. So,
I think that's more to do with the fact that Hollywood tends to ruin whatever it touches.
Yeah, true.
Well, I mean, take a look at the Big Mouse canceling Mouse Guard. So, when it bought up the Fox movie studios.
Oh, they did? I didn't know about that.
Yeah, Disney was the one who put the kibosh on it when they bought up the Fox movie studios.
There'll only be one mouse around here.
More or less. And I'm sure, God forbid Disney ever get the rights to Redwall, but man, that would be a mess.
Ooh, no.
But I want any Disney princesses inside Redwall. No, do not turn Cornflower into a Disney princess. But you can see it happening.
I can, especially that since now that we're recording this in mid-September, folks, when the Pinocchio remake has just come out, and there's mixed feelings on the animal animation that came out through the Fox character and the Pleasure Island sequence. But mark my words, that was prototyping the animation they're going to be doing for the eventual Robin Hood that's coming. So, yeah.
I haven't anything for Pinocchio, but just on that description alone, I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Well,
also, Disney, please stop rehashing what you've already done. That's lazy. No, bad mouse, bad.
You say that, but I'm actually kind of interested in Little Mermaid. Where they're going to go with that? Because that's come out. The trailer for that's come out too. So, but
what if
that
it ends
also
like the actual fairy tale? That would be cool.
Oh God, that's dark.
Oh wow.
The Little Mermaid in this case has Lin-Manuel Miranda overseeing audio. So.
Oh really?
Yeah. And he's working with as much of the original cast and crew crew, not cast, that they have.
Okay.
I mean that's a little less concerning because live action Lion King was just a cash grab.
Yes. If my other podcast with Jeremy was still running, I would love to talk about that. But that's not what we're here to talk about. So let's talk about
podcast.
Let's talk about franchised video games. This has been a thing since the halcyon days of arcade and even like the Atari 2600, certainly into the NES and forward era. And there are a lot of bad ones out there, to be certain. You can go into any of those angry reviewers on the internet and find hours of material on it. That's not what we're here, but it's a thing. And I remember being at PAX East all the way back in 2013, and I remember sitting on a panel of programmers who were there in the early days of video games, like really blowing up, and they mentioned at the time, like, if you got a license to make something, often you weren't given any assets from the parent company. You had to make them wholesale.
Mm.
Now, that's not true today, but it explains a lot of those early licensed games that were basically just there and made whether it was Star Wars, the Jedi lightsaber trainer on the Atari 2600, which is weird. Or like Empire Strikes Back on the 2600, which is literally you just fighting an unlimited amount of AT-ATs to, yeah.
Just anecdotally, I've seen in a museum a copy of the Atari ET game that they dug up from that landfill.
And there's the most infamous example. The game that literally caused the 1983 video game crash. Not alone, mind you.
Is that apocryphal? Okay.
No, it's not alone, but it was kind of like, it's seen as kind of that trigger moment. Okay. And again, for our younger listeners out here, there was a period where genuinely the electronics industry didn't know that video games were going to survive.
Yeah, think about it in the way that okay, maybe not for our youngest listeners, but our slightly old, not super old listeners. You know how the world like suddenly changed, or your parents or older siblings told you the world changed after 9/11? That kind of I'm not sure I'll ever feel safe again sort of story that they might happen to tell about. Think that.
Here's the short version of that, of what the video game crash, because it is relevant to talking about video games, is that there were so many bad games flooding the market. So many cheaply made things, much as straight up pornography games. Yeah, that was a thing. Flooding the market in the early 1980s, that consumer confidence in this as a reliable entertainment source bottomed out. Like, you couldn't swing a cat inside of a Target or a Walmart and not hit a video game, in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So people stopped buying them en masse, and it crashed the industry. And the only reason we have the gaming platforms we have today is Nintendo, believe it or not. They saw a market to recover this, but they had almost draconian rules put into place to ensure games were at least of a minimum quality before they left the shelf.
Because they also sold the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System. It's not a console, it's an entertainment system. That's why it's called the NES, is because it was.
Are you not entertained?
I am, because I collect retro cartridges, actually.
But
I stopped trying to keep up with the newest game consoles a long time ago, except the Switch in my other room. So I actually get more kick out of collecting old games these days.
Oh, sure.
And of course, the Steam summer and winter sales where I have to guard my wallet.
No, don't mention that.
Gabe is for you.
So back to licensed games here. If you go into that early period of gaming after the crash, and definitely in the NES and Super Nintendo eras, there were a lot of, this is what they did. Cartoons, movies. If they thought they could sell it to kids as a video game, they would. And some are great, some are bad. And I can remember, I never owned too many of them myself. I usually rented them, like a lot of my peers. But some were good, some were bad. And there was, then there was the really bad ones.
That were obviously just hey, everyone will know this name. Everyone will buy it. Cough, tea.
Or Jaws on the NES. So I remember, and then Hook was probably my least favorite of when renting that for a weekend on the Super Nintendo. It's got a fun training level, but the game just goes unforgiving very quickly. So, but a video game based on a literature series, not nearly as common. Like, you usually have to have a movie to take advantage of a book before that was going to happen.
Or like a TV show adaptation of some variety.
Mm-hmm. Like, don't get me wrong, there were some genuinely good adaptational games back in the time. Like the original DuckTales NES game that's so popular it got a remake. Or the Chip and Dale's 1 and 2.
Wishbone was okay.
There was a Wishbone game?
Yep, you played the Odyssey.
Neat.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, a literature-based book series, TV series then. So go figure. I know the Hunt for Red October had a really terrible game.
Is that for kids?
You know, that's the other thing. A lot of these licensed games, you don't expect them. They're not exactly like the original product is not actually a kid-friendly audience. Like there were Rambo video games.
Yeah.
The RoboCop video games. Uh,
Well, I mean, it's the same thing why back in the 80s there were all these action figures marketed towards, like 10, 11-year-old kids, with the main characters from R-rated movies back when,
yeah.
PG actually meant something.
Yeah.
But let's get into Redwall here. Now, before we actually get into this game proper, it is worth also mentioning the Redwall Online community back in the dark days of Modem, that when they realized you could talk to people across the country, across the world, and you have a shared interest. I can remember, and I don't remember the name of this forum or where it was doing, but I remember is a Redwall forum where you got to set up your own character and they had combat tournaments done over forum posts. I must have been
turn-based?
Yeah.
Cool.
It was 2 people in it was 3 people total. You had 2 people fighting with their characters, and you had a referee who would roll dice in between. So, but I'm sure that forum is long gone.
Was it Warlord?
Oh, I don't know. It was Redwall specific that I remember.
Yeah, because the 2 that are coming to mind are Redwall Warlords and Redwall Muck.
I remember I made a wolf character, so. But, so a Redwall video game, on the other hand, has not happened before Soma Games took this up. Now, I know we all played it, and so we can give this away, but pretend we haven't. And if you were to make a Redwall video game, do you have any idea what your approach would be?
There's part of me that would want to go the RTS route and, say, here, we're just going to say, here, summon a small group of moles to build me defense fortifications and then stock it full of large hedgehogs with mallets.
I kind of, that's actually where my mind would have gone to, was a real-time strategy. And for those who don't know what we mean by that, that's like StarCraft or Warcraft or Halo Wars or Command & Conquer.
Or Age of Empires.
Age of Empires, true. Civilization, if you will, but on a smaller, maybe not like the Sid Meier scale. The other obvious option is you could go full the other, what I would imagine would be Skyrim style, where it's first person and obviously no sorcery, but click
open world,
and you click to swing your sword and interact.
A fighter could be cool.
Yeah. Redwall. Yeah. Mortal Kombat with Redwall.
Yeah, exactly.
Badger wins every time.
Now, there's a part of me that's also thinking, would it be possible to do like a choose your own adventure style game? I know we'll talk about this in the future, but procedurally generated.
Ooh, I like that. There's a very old game that was made for the Windows 3.1 95 that it's like a 2D RPG called Castle of the Winds. And the first half of the game was freeware to get you to buy the second half. But it was so much fun. Not because it was anything, unique or but too exciting, whatnot. It was all turn-based, and you could either just chop the things in half or use magic on them. But what made it fun is that it dynamically generated dungeons from scratch. That first floor was always the same, like when you arrived into it in the game. But the next 4 or 10 floors, depending on how deep the dungeon was completely new every time.
Nice.
Sounds fun.
And you can still get it out there on the internet, but finding a way to make it work is another story.
Yeah.
Because the original author, you could use DOSBox to a degree, but you basically have to have a Windows 95 or 3.1 virtual machine. And the original author made the whole game just all completely free years ago. So that would be certainly an option. You could also do with Redwall style.
Dungeon crawling through Salamastron, that could be sweet.
Mm-hmm. So what we got?
Oh, idea. Salamastron base builder. So you you arrive with just here's the basics. Now you have to dig out the specific fortifications that you need, and you get attacked by sea rats.
Oh.
See, the more I talk about it, the more I like real-time strategy, because that you could have the whole Warcraft or Starcraft balance between vermin and regular forest dwellers.
Yeah.
Certain one side has better advantages than the other, and vice versa. But that's not the game we got. What we got, and I'm not knocking this, guys. I enjoy this game. For Lost Legends of Redwall, the Scout Act 1, we have, and quote genre, and I'm reading right from the Redwall Wiki, progressive fantasy adventure, stealth adventure, puzzle adventure. Stealth, huh? Oh, God. Oh, no.
Come, Pete. Don't hide your true feelings.
I like stealth games.
I like them, but I am horrible at them.
Oh, yeah.
I am utterly horrible at them. You put Splinter Cell or Metal Gear in front of me, I am not gonna do well.
Oh, that's my playstyle.
That's not my playstyle. My playstyle is to be very, very early Martin and run at it with swords bare.
Yeah.
Oh, so you are the one player who doesn't do a Skyrim stealth archer build.
No, no. We'll get to my troubles with stealth later on in this. But, and again, the Act 1 came out on September 14th, 2018. Now, Act 1 has seen some major overhauls in its own time. Because I remember playing it that first winter, and it's that opening tutorial, which we're going to talk about, was very different. So, but the game begins proper with, as all Redwall products properly begin, a prologue.
Yay.
Backstory.
It doesn't do the tapestry thing like the cartoon did, which is more as a pity. But we do get it's at Redwall, and they're doing Redwall things. You can see it starts, and after you hit new game, mind you, not it. You see two brothers talking about, apparently they're putting on a play, and Formal assures one of them that yes, the stage will be ready in time.
It's the visual style is very much painterly still images in a slideshow with text with subtitles going over top of it.
And spoken voice, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
actually, I thought this was a good rendition of the Mole dialect, actually.
Yeah, we'll talk about Sister Edelweiss in a minute, because that's an awesome name. But yeah, it starts with, Redwallers just doing what Redwallers do. And, can't help but wonder, why don't they have a permanent stage in the Great Hall? I guess it's just not convenient.
Mm-hmm.
but it is. And we meet the main brother, who is our omnipresent narrator, is brother Jethro.
Jethro.
Jethro Tull, yes.
Ha! Not quite. Jethro Barley Row. This is officially his name. And again, this raises questions about, if when a mouse or other creature becomes a brother or sister, what vows they take, because we find out Jethro has a grandson. But for all we know, it's an adopted grandson, so I'm not really going to press this point.
Yeah, his parents are dead, obviously.
Clearly.
Always.
Always.
All the orphans.
So Jethro approaches Sister Edelweiss, which I gotta like the name.
Yeah.
And if you haven't catch the reference, that's a reference to Sound of Music.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
There was a bunch of that stuff in here.
Oh, there's a lot of references here. But
I think they basically were like, okay, what is everyone's favorite fill in the blank? And
yeah.
someone on the team got to insert a reference somewhere.
So, and I also want to comment, I don't know if this is the first time we've seen a mole on medical staff for Redwall, but yeah, this is a healer mole, so that's cool. Okay. And she's got a great bedside manner.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly. Although she does tell her patient that he really should stop carrying around that ancient telescope.
Mm-hmm.
And the kid himself. The kid, was it his name? William Bolero. He's a bit of a brat, but it's a kid with a cold.
He's in this giant green fluffy armchair, all like cuddled up under a large, like purplish, magenta-ish quilt.
Mm-hmm.
It looks really cozy. I can't lie.
Right?
Yeah, and so he's been told to take tonic, and his grandfather decides, okay, I'm going to tell you the story about the play they're going to put on. And I can't help but the kid wonders, like, well, can't I just watch the play? No, you're listening.
No.
So yes, this is our narration, and this leads us into the story proper. And before we go into the story proper, because the other thing to talk about here is that effectively what Soma Games chose to do, and I really appreciate them for this. I really thought this was a great move. Is essentially what we're walking into is a Redwall expanded universe.
Oh, yeah, I thought that was a good idea.
So, especially when you were covering any kind of franchise media, there is a real risk that if your story isn't up to snuff or whatever you're putting out doesn't go over well with the fans, and yes, some fandoms are toxic and will never accept what you do. Looking at you, Star Wars. It is a good idea to sometimes tell stories in the same universe without invoking main characters.
Mm-hmm.
And this actually goes to my own personal rule of when I go out and read expanded universe materials for one franchise or another, in general terms, unless I have a good reason not to, I prefer stories that have nothing to do with primary series characters. I prefer reading stories that take place in the world, but not about the main characters.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is that these are usually big worlds. And
use them, yeah.
Exactly. One of my favorite book series that now the mouse has, done in the great Disney purge of the Star Wars EU. And to be honest, though, George Lucas kind of got into a argument with the author over it because she was making Mandalorians cool and questioning Jedi ethics in the Clone Wars was Star Wars Republic Commando. And I still recommend this, even if the book series got cut off before the sixth and final book was written and published. because it actually shows those clone troopers as A, human beings, and B, showing the fact that these Jedi kind of did treat them as cannon fodder, and they were a little mad about it. And also, lastly, and I'm not here to debate Star Wars because, again, see my earlier comment, but when Order 66 comes down, Mace Windu is essentially tried a coup d'etat.
Sure.
So, yeah. Yeah, what do you guys do, Star Wars fans? Not listen? What big whoop? Want to fight about it? Anyway.
Well, Mace Windu was powerful enough to defeat Darth Sidious, so
We're gonna get into a nerd battle.
Okay, I will say this as the not Star Wars fan in the room. Funny thing here for me, I have a deck of Star Wars playing cards in my hand right now that I'm.
So back to Redwall.
Speaking of Redwall,
It's Redwall EU. What they've done here, some games and the writers have done, is that while we start at Redwall Abbey as the prologue, because Redwall Media, the primary story that we're going to follow through all of Acts 1 through 3 has nothing. Doesn't have nothing to do with the Abbey. It doesn't focus on the Abbey at all. These are completely novel characters that we're dealing with.
Yeah, it's related. They make reference to it and to series lore, but they don't specifically invoke much beyond saying, "Oh, this character," or that topic that we're all familiar with. But you never really see it.
And we'll need to revisit this question at the end of Act 3. But I'm curious to your guys' opinions as when do you think, like, that prologue, when is this game actually taking place in? Like, I know the main story, which we'll talk about, is shortly before the original book, but when do you think Jethro is telling this story to William?
I just always assume everything is after like Marlfox time these days, but I don't know.
I'm gonna go on a limb and say that this is post-series because we've already discussed, the length of time between Redwall and where we are in the main timeline currently, with Sable Queen. And the spyglass here that is brought up is, referred to as basically being rusty and possibly carrying disease of some sort.
Yeah.
Something in there. It's like,
I know William's got his tetanus shot.
Yeah, exactly what I was about to say. It's just like, so for an object that has obviously been cared for long enough, I would say it at least has to be, 200 years, possibly more.
Okay.
We don't know what kind of air quality is normally like inside the Abbey, but I would probably guess that there's a certain amount of humidity there, so that might play a role.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say. At the earliest this can possibly be, that the framing age here is that this is like right around Pearls of Letra as the earliest portion, and this is assuming that Jethro was a kid and alive during the original book, because this is his grandson he's talking to.
I would disagree because we don't hear, at least at this point, of any other characters that are occurring in this prologue sequence.
Mm-hmm.
That,
oh, I know, and I'm probably very wrong on that. I'm just saying chronologically, the earliest it could be is around Pearls.
Well, there are references to characters in Pearls that then show up, at least in name, in Long Patrol. So you can chain together from Redwall all the way to Tagarung with character links. So in my mind, this has to be at earliest post Tagarung.
Okay, that's totally fair.
Wow, that is late.
Okay. So again, we generally don't know, and again, credit to Soma Games because it's better to like establish that we're at either after or before the primary book. They started this all. That's all they have to do. There's enough gaps in between books that we've just talked about that you can literally put this almost anywhere.
Mhm.
Yeah, the source material lends itself to a wider thing anyway, pretty well.
Yeah. So what we see then in the game proper is that this.
We go there. I do want to say I like the visual aesthetic for these cutscene stills. Colors are muted and yet warm. They use a lot of earth tones. Uh, the backgrounds are mostly like wooden stone, and all the characters are wearing appropriate like greens, browns, whites, which for the period fabric that would be used is
Oh yeah.
it. Uh, but they occasionally have things like red curtains for the stage and the purple blanket that is over William in his big comfy chair. And it's like the whole thing with the lighting feels very warm and inviting, which I really appreciate because it gives off that same vibe that you get from the peacetime Redwall scenes.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, this is it's kind of an oil painting style.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the general aesthetic we get the whole time. So the game begins proper, not at Redwall, I would assume a westward settlement called Lily Grove, which is a small town of mice with its own scouting corps, which we're gonna get to. And again, props, because this lets them make their own lore wholesale while still referencing Redwall and Salamandastron, because fortunately we're never going to see Salamandastron in this game, but it is name dropped.
I'm going to talk about this more as we go, but these are definitely Christian mice on this side of the world.
That kind of harkens back to the original book.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, so the story follows two playable characters, but you only get to pick one to play the game through. And I've played both of them through the 3 times I've tried this game, and there's really no difference. It's aesthetic.
Oh, sure.
It's cosmetic. It's really who you want to start with. My first 2 playthroughs were with Sophia, but I went with Liam for this one. So
the video walkthrough that I watched chose Liam as well.
Mm-hmm. Literally, if you pick, the dialogue literally changes to, if you pick Liam, Sophia's already gone through training, and we'll talk about in a second, and is a scout corps. But if you pick the other one, then the other one's already finished their training.
I chose Liam because I was channeling my inner 7-year-old who had to identify.
I understand. So, and Lily Grove is showing, again, this town has their own scout corps, which is essentially, I don't want to call them military because they're not. But they're, for lack of a better way to put this, they're kind of a coast guard.
Yeah.
Whereas they do military-like duties, but they're not out there just picking on robber foxes for fun, like the Gossam.
I would say they're kind of like a defensive, non-military military. And I know it sounds contradictory, but that's kind of what they are.
Yeah. We're part of a narco-syndicist commune.
So yeah, story begins, and you basically, and I do love how they frame this, is that the camera pans from Jethro and William to the stage where you see 2 actors representing Sophia and Liam, and that's when the game switches over to a more live action, okay, air quotes, a live third person view of, you want to pick Liam or do you want to pick Sophia? And then once you pick your chosen mouse, you follow them on a third person view for the rest of the game.
Mhm.
And the whole first major section here is a tutorial level, because most games have a tutorial level these days.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll say this now, I just from watching the tutorial, and this was one specific person doing one specific playthrough, but from best I can tell, it doesn't seem like it's a super hand-holdy tutorial.
No.
I've
No.
played a number of different games, and I've watched a whole host more on YouTube, where the games insist on holding your hand and making sure that you can't possibly get lost while playing the game. And that's just really not great because you're not giving the more advanced players a chance to, spread their wings and fly. You're just you're shackling them.
I've
And
found the best games that they may have a tutorial level. They give you the minimum they need you to get to the basics and let you discover the rest on your own.
Yeah.
and in this case, it's some tutorialization is needed for some of the more interesting mechanics, which we'll talk about, but it is all very much in context for the world, and it makes sense. It doesn't come across as this press X to jump.
Press E to not die. Yes. And
The
there
best
are no quick time events. Thank God there are no quick time events.
I hate
press F
those.
in respects.
So let's talk about this early tutorial level. Now, like I said, I played this, within a couple of months when it first came out, and the original tutorial level was a little bigger. And I'm quoting right from the wiki here to make this easy. The first version of the game contained a completely different starting level. Hilltop Camp contained 3 challenging courses that players had to complete before progressing. Tuss's Obstacle Course, with navigation using the Wayglass. Fraby's Stealth Maids, where you had to hide from fake rats. And Laban's Scent Caves, using the scent functionality. When they put out an update to the game in 2021, it kind of smashed everything together.
Yeah.
Which I like and don't like. I appreciate that they simplified it, that they give you it's more direct to the point, that it's still not hand-holdy. You're still being told what you have. You got to figure out some of this on your own. But at the same time, they've eliminated some of the more frustrating elements of that early version of the game, like the Tuss's Obstacle Course, where you had to use navigation using the Wayglass. It was fine, but you had to use what they call geocaching, where you were given a compass direction and aperture for height, and had to find a thing. And that got frustrating. So this simplifies it down, and I appreciate it.
I also want to talk about briefly, as far as locomotion goes.
How anthropomorphic are they?
There seems to be a mix of bipedal locomotion for just, slow movements, but when a character starts to run, they drop down onto all fours, which I kind of like because it feels like, if a squirrel is going to make use of the fact that they have sharp claws for being able to climb up stuff and grip the surface of whatever they're climbing on, you would think that if a character like this would want to run, they wouldn't do it on 2 legs, they would do it on 4 for better balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I generally agree with you. I like this hybridization of anthropomorphic and feral, where for the most part, characters walk around on their hind paws and act more the anthropomorphic, but in times of stress here, when you need to book it, you go animalistic.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Well, this
And
stresses
everybody's
more
wearing
animal
pants.
properties. Yeah.
Everybody's wearing pants. I love it.
With like an extra pant leg for their tails.
I noticed that too. But it is winter when the game's taking place, so.
Or it's like the 80s. They have tail warmers.
Ah.
I also want to talk about just the general aesthetic of the world now that we're in 3D. It uses a lot of the same colors that we saw in the 2D cutscenes. I've heard people complain from both within the fandom and from out that they don't think the game looks very good, and I understand that to a point. But at the same time, the textures aren't not being high definition. I think is somewhat intentional.
Yeah, it's not Crisis.
What it's
Exactly
supposed
what I was going to say.
it's invoked that same kind of watercolor painterly look, the thing that makes it feel like you're in a world that it exists, but it's not quite real. There's still an element of the fantastic to it. So, I mean, I would call it charming, and I know some people would
Yeah.
probably agree with me, but it feels appropriately fantasy and not like the grim fantasy that is Game of Thrones, where the world feels like it's made of browns, blacks, and grays.
I mean, if I had to make a small criticism, and it's a very small one, the only thing I don't like is that we, when characters talk to each other, we just see a kind of Star Fox-esque character portrait with their subtitles, and we hear their voice instead of seeing the character model on screen through the lip flap. Fine, that's fine.
I excuse that with it being probably a cheap game to make.
Again, I have no complaints.
Yeah.
It
reminded me a little bit of those like LucasArts games that used to be around. It's the way it looked.
For me, as not a fan of the Spyro franchise, it reminds me of some footage I've seen of those games where, yeah, your terrain is not going to be like super well defined, but it's good enough to get the job done because the focus isn't on the world as far as the physicality of it. It's focusing on the characters, the story, and the actions of the characters themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all that said, your tasks in the tutorial level, the updated one anyway, are, again, pretty much close to what the original one was, but it's basically, it's there to teach you the basics. It's there to teach you on the whole how to use navigation. There is one section where you use navigation using the telescope.
Mm-hmm.
You do have to go through a cave that teaches you basic stealth of where your scent may go and how to avoid being scented. Much less, and generally can put you through basically a bunch of a very adorable. I love how they dress up these fake rats. They're basically scarecrows with rat snouts.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about the scent mechanic now or later?
Might as well.
Okay.
That was interesting.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything quite like this before done in any other game, but it makes perfect sense in context here because
It did remind me of one game, but go ahead.
The whole point is because they're animals, they have a sensitive nose and are able to smell more deeply. So they use the sense of the world around them as a way to more deeply understand what things are, where they are, and all that jazz. Mechanically, for a video game, it's to be able to show you extra information that won't always be like rendered. Like you could stop and sniff, and if it's a scent you recognize and you're close enough, it acts as almost like an X-ray vision effect, which is really cool. So, in context, it does something unusual, kind of recontextualizes mechanics that you've seen in other games, but does it in a way that's completely faithful to the franchise, which I love. It's really cool.
What this reminded me of slightly was, although this wasn't constant, or you could even call it consistently, there were only designated times. Legend of Zelda: The Twilight Princess had a scent mechanic, but it was only for tracking scents. It wasn't making sure you weren't exposed. I agree. I genuinely like this idea because it shows the kind of care in the world that a world of smaller rodentia and up to about a European badger size, yeah, scent would be a huge thing for them.
Yeah, I had mixed feelings on it, just in context of like they've never really mentioned it in the books, but I thought it worked really well. So
I disagree. There are a couple of books where smell comes up, but it's like it's an accessory to existing tracking. But the
yeah,
original book, there is some genuinely good moments where there is where a one character, well, I think was it Chicken Hound or Sailor? I want to say Chicken Hound, who is running away from the Abbey, and he can smell on the wind Constance, and it's like an oh crap moment for him.
No, I thought it was really well done.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
If I only had to offer a complaint, is how you tell the difference between various scents is that, and don't get me wrong, I think this mechanic is very clever in its own right, is that you see scent trails as various colored smoke, essentially drifting with the wind.
Yeah.
And all well and good. And how you identify something is by what colors are on that smoke. Because you're supposed to be able to differ which the ones they are. But when you're having to figure out what veggies are which, the difference between yellow green and like that pale, more pale, not quite forest green, kind of a brown green.
Yeah, right.
That's really hard to figure out.
Yeah, not the sort of thing that would be easy for somebody with any type of color blindness.
Then there's also an accessibility issue there.
But I will say this did make me think one of the later sections where it was focused on scent reminded me very heavily of Simeon from Muriel and Bellmaker. And yes, I'm specifically bringing this up for Katie's benefit. But the whole thing was very much a, using sense to like visualize what things were in a garden so you didn't pull up the wrong vegetables.
It's also used for the when you actually get into the non-tutorial sections, making sure whatever rats or other vermin are nearby cannot smell you.
Yeah.
And give yourself away.
There's a stealth section, and you have to stay downwind of them. You can see your scent trailing off, and if you were on one side as opposed to the other, they'd be able to pick up your scent.
And I'm pretty sure you could successfully mask your scent if you hid in the right bushes.
We'll get to that actually.
Okay.
That actually is a game mechanic.
Okay.
So other than the tutorial level, the other thing you're told to do, as whether you're running around with one player character or another, is your initiation ritual to joining the Scout Corps, and is to cook dinner for everybody. Okay, that's
the most
totally fine.
Redwall thing.
It's a very Redwall-esque thing. Don't get me wrong. And you have to go around and poll your fellow Scout Corps people to figure out what they do and do not like. What you can get away with putting in the soup you're cooking, what you cannot.
Some of them got really weird about it.
Yeah, there were some genuinely very exacting tastes among your peers. And I do want to, again, bring up Lily Grove having the Scout Corps is finally... I love this idea that they have this non-military military. Because say what you will about Salamandastron as this center of power and has an active military force. And the Gossamer and the various Outerholts are no slouches themselves. But Redwall itself tends to be passive. Like, they don't keep... unless they have a very good reason to, they don't train people for combat.
Yeah, the people who know combat that are at Redwall have come from elsewhere, received training elsewhere, and are currently living there.
Or are the reincarnation or otherwise picked by Martin to be the designated warrior. No. So again, I appreciate Lily Grove doing this because you do want to be aware of who's in your neighborhood. So the other thing, okay, so you're running around Scout Group, and you're told you have to get specific ingredients. A couple of the veggies are straight from the garden, then that's where that scent mechanic comes in to pick the right veggies.
I screwed that up.
Yeah, I did too. And then the other thing you have to get, there's various things, is you have to go through the obstacle course to get other veggies, which that took me a while to figure out, actually, like, how do I get into the obstacle course? I wasn't observant as I probably should have been. So, and I was trying to do this all by myself instead of calling up a walkthrough or a YouTube before.
Oh, me too.
Before my game kept crashing, but I did. And then the last major ingredient was finding the cheese, which is a geocaching, but it's only one instead of the original version of the game, which had 4 of these things.
Oh, that would be a huge pain.
Yes, it was doable, but it got annoying.
Yeah, I'm the sort of person that likes, the Where's Waldo style of, okay, here's this big crazy mess, hunt the pixel. But I only like in the context of, okay, is everything else, all the visual noise worth looking at? And if the answer is no, then I don't like it.
Now, the only thing I couldn't find, which was requested ingredients, were fish, which was odd because I was standing next to a barrel of them and I couldn't, take a fish. Why can't I get ye flask? And,
well, you have to go through the obvious exit of Dennis.
And we were told in dialogue that hot root grows near the hot spring. I went to the hot spring. There was no hot root. It's that I could find. So I made the old basic soup. Just follow the core recipe they gave you.
I just mishmashed stuff together and hoped it worked.
Did it work?
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah. Hey, if people ate your soup and they didn't keel over, I think you won.
That's another thing they do in this game. They call them people sometimes. I'm like,
Yeah, I'll say this. The writing is definitely not like Jakesian. It still feels Redwall, but you can tell it's somebody else's writing style.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, there will be things like talking about hands instead of paws, or specifically talking about fingers, and it's like, I'm not sure that's the correct nomenclature. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Feels wrong.
Yeah. All in all, it's still good.
Oh, totally.
Again,
yeah.
It's a Star Wars EU book in relation
Right.
to the main EU, so I have no complaints on that. But let's talk about the thing that did show up a lot of, and we've already kind of hinted at this, was references. They are everywhere.
Oh, so many references.
There are some that are more explicit than others, apparently. Like the potato one is straight up. When you get a potato, it literally, whichever your character you're playing says, potatoes. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew.
I think this is soup, which was like, well, that's a little on the nose.
The cook says, with practice, you can eventually become a master chief, and it's like, then he corrects himself, master chef.
And I didn't get a chance to explore the cemetery because my game kept crashing before I get to that point. But allegedly, you can find a grave that has a tribute to Brian.
Yes.
Let's see. When was that? That was almost 2 years ago now. Somebody I know through the community was telling me about this specific reference, and actually brought it up and streamed it so I could see the specific grave, and it was really cool.
It's actually quite nice.
And man, I wish I could have seen it. But again, my game kept crashing. So I'm going to figure, before we record part 2 of Act 1 and Acts 2 and 3, I'm going to figure out what went wrong. I'll probably have to reinstall the game and start all over again.
It's a 2-hour game.
I know. But this is the 3rd time I've tried this.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Hush you.
Oh,
So yeah.
ID10T errors.
Pep.
Hey, I understood that reference.
Good. I was hoping you would.
Um,
I would be upset if he didn't get those references.
Yeah.
work IT. Actually, I moved on from fixing IT myself. I actually got a better job this summer where I teach other people to fix the thing. So
Fantastic.
I know. So the trading sections, by the way, took me a bit because I'm not the most astute at stealth games, but that's not a major mechanic, right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
I never asked for stealth.
Of course, when you finally make the soup of choice and everybody's happy and pirates!
Oh, before we go there, at least with Liam, makes reference at one point as you're going around trying to find everything to his original home of Southsword in Castle Floret.
I must have missed that.
I think I did too.
It was in the video that I watched.
Okay.
It was a random in passing line, but I loved it. As soon as I was like, I put my notes in all caps, Southsword.
Yep. And I
did
found
see
the
it.
magenta chef you were talking about.
Yeah. The chef in the walkthrough video is missing his texture, so it's the default color of magenta that all
Yeah.
seem to have sorts of games.
He's great.
So he's just this glowing purple man or mouse.
Oh, don't worry. I'm sure he's not radioactive.
No.
Much.
Well, so
He eats the soup.
getting to the forward of the story, of course, everything's going. Your celebrated graduation is moving from into a novice status into the scout corps and pirates attack.
Mhm.
But not just any pirates. We've already said that this game actually takes place in the winter before the original book, so it's a specific pirate that's attacking.
Mm-hmm.
One with an iron barbed tail.
Was he voiced by a certain voice actor we've interviewed on the show? At least in the audiobook?
Hmm.
It's
Maybe.
Clooney. It's Clooney. We're shown just a kind of a back shot of Clooney wearing his famous helmet, and yep, he's name dropped. It's Clooney. So your next task in the next section, and where my game kept breaking and drove me nuts, was a stealth section that requires you to get by actual rats and not be seen or scented by them. Oh, I'm sure this can't possibly go.
3 hours later.
I hate this section.
I found myself terrible at this initially.
Oh, yeah. I mean, besides the fact my game kept crashing, I couldn't actually complete it. I was trying to be logical and follow the game's own rules, but I kept either getting scented or seen and I really shouldn't have been.
No, exactly.
And then my game would crash. It's like,
You have my sympathy. The walkthrough that I watched was literally done in one shot.
You can't see it, but my eye is twitching.
The rules
but
felt a little inconsistent.
it did. To its credit, the game is consistent to the point that if your character is standing in bushes or some other material that is a very strong scent on its own, it'll hide you.
Yes.
Like the vermin might, because they have a weird alert system where you're basically shown that a vermin can either see or scent you. But they might pick you up, but it's going to be on a very weak level, and they won't come running to try to capture you. What that alert system, by the way, shows like it's a top-down profile of a rat's head in just a wireframe, like basically a wireframe or outline. And if it's scent, it's orange. It turns like it's an orange meter filling up. The head fills up like as a meter, and with a wavy line to indicate scent. If it's sight, they have an open eye that quickly fills up with red.
Yeah. I found myself just bashing my way through this first segment, and it worked best. I was like, just stand behind them.
I mean, it's not as bad as when Jeremy and I were playing through Aliens Colonial Marines. Yeah.
Oh.
Talk about your bad license game.
Yeah. Stories about that title.
Where I was trying to play by the rules of the Alien franchise, use my motion detector, keep my distance, because aliens, spray acid when they die. And he was literally just running at them, guns blazing. And he would win, and he didn't die very often. So, but again, I was trying to follow the rules, but I kept getting captured quite a bit, actually.
Let that be a lesson to you.
To be fair, the enemy AI seems, well, it's not overly smart. It's not dumb either, but they definitely are on defined paths, unless they have a good reason to be interrupted, which is fine. So all that said, when I did actually go and watch the video that Matthias watched for his part, because again, my game crashed. If that happens, it's beyond my control, and I'm allowed to look at the Let's Play, as far as I'm concerned. Those guards are not paid enough to be that aware, or they're just that unaware. I'm not sure which.
I mean, we've seen like Sneezewort and Lousewort. I think they pick from the best stocks. It's basically just, are you breathing, have a pulse, and can hold a spear? Great. You're on guard duty.
Yeah. Did you fill out your W-2 mostly correctly?
Assuming they can read, yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Can you put an X on this line?
Yeah, I can imagine Vermin HR sitting there like, okay, I've got your paperwork. Can you here's your contract. I can't read that.
Just agree to the EULA.
They look at this guy. Okay, I'll read it to you. I don't know, that takes too long. Just sign.
Actually, you know what would work? Okay, so absolutely nobody will have read this series, so I'm not even going to mention it. But there was a character that kind of like a humanoid fox in a like human land, so a shunned species, but carried out the life as an assassin. And to keep track of favors that people owed him for various things, he would take a drop of their blood and put it on, piece of paper and would catalog that. So I'm thinking to myself, combine that with the scent mechanic of this game, couldn't Vermin HR basically take a drop of blood and say, here, you're going to mark this with your scent?
Yeah. Might work.
Mm-hmm.
But that's as far as we're going to take it here, folks, again, because my game kept crashing. Yeah.
I mean, there is one other thing I do want to mention is at the end of this sneaky sequence, you're given a choice before the chapter ends between just continuing on or stopping for an optional side quest to save a burning building.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're given the option, Jethro is narrating. William cuts in and is basically like, I once heard you say the needs of the many outweigh the needs
Yeah.
Is that what you're getting at?
Oh, yeah. I actually got to see that movie on the big screen not terribly long ago.
Oh, nice.
40th anniversary.
Mm.
So.
Yeah, they keep doing stuff like that.
Fathom events.
Yeah.
So, a little pricey, but they usually get to see some old stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I kind of cried at Spock's death. Manly tears! Manly tears!
I don't blame you.
I mean, this is Spock we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Yep.
But back to the Redwall game. So, yep, the section ends again. You can do the optional rescue, and this section ends with either Liam or Sophia like having the worst day ever look on their face, and we're told like this was supposed to be their graduation day, and all
Yeah.
this won't happen. we find out their counterpart, which the character you didn't choose, oh, they're fine. They just ran ahead to draw vermin away from the camp. They'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and we forgot to mention, the two main characters are engaged to be married like days after these events are supposed to be taking place.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's a
Oh, your
big deal
fiance's
throughout this whole thing.
fine.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen?
Death.
Yeah. It's only
Right.
invading rats.
Only.
Where's the badger? Get the badger!
If you're playing as a badger, just go around killing everybody.
Be like the Grimlock section in Fall of Cybertron. Nothing stands against you.
Could be fun.
For those of you who have any passing interest in Transformers, play the game. Seriously. The literal last chapter is you as Grimlock just stomping around in dinosaur mode.
Nice.
So yes. So that's that to start us off, folks. I like it so far when the game works. And when I can get through a stealth section without the game crashing. But I'm not good at stealth games. So, again, the only complaints are minor in what I've already mentioned. So it's not a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
The only complaint I'll have, as far as like graphics, is during the stealth section of the walkthrough I watched, the pop-in on the bushes was terrible.
Yeah.
It was, you would have textures pop in for bushes 2 bushes away from you while you're looking directly at them. It's like, I know optimization for these kinds of games can be hard, but that seems a little tugging at my shirt collar. So, other than that, though, I liked the visual aesthetic of the whole game. It looked great. I
Yeah.
liked during the make stew sequence, the music at camp was just super chill acoustic guitar, which really went with the whole Redwall camping vibe. And the voice actors, I noticed there seemed to be like some slight differences in audio quality. I mean, don't know how many people will know this, but Soma Games actually went out to the community and was basically like, "Hey, send in your voice samples, and we might, choose you to voice act for the game." So this is all community members.
Oh, cool.
Community members. So,
well, those who can pass have a British, Scottish, or Irish accent. So,
or Scottish.
I said Scottish.
You said Scottish? I missed that. I thought you said Irish.
I said British, Irish, or Scottish. Yeah. Anyway,
that
sorry. Being said, we have a couple of new reviews, folks.
Oh, really?
Nice.
Well, one official review on iTunes from Steve from Albuquerque. Yeah, should have taken the left turn.
Yes.
So, and I'm sure he's heard that no small amount. Quote, after listening and reading along since March 2021, yes, this is my personal flex, I am fully caught up with the pod and can do a complete review. This is the definitive Redwall podcast. Evan Pete runs a tight ship, and every contributor provides excellent insight about the content in a fun, engaging way. Can't wait for more. 5 out of 5.
Cool.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and then we got a very good email that I'm going to respond to probably after we're done here today. Pulling it up. My 5-star review from Samantha. So it's a lengthy email, but the short version is that she finds that we're very amazing, and they can leave ratings for us on Spotify now. So I should probably check that.
Good. No, just amazing. Very amazing.
Very amazing. And relatively new listener, but the past 4 months she's eagerly devoured the majority of the backlog and have almost caught up to Sable Queen. and regret that didn't find us sooner. So she's asking if fans can submit questions for future trivia episodes.
Oh, that'd be a good idea.
Yes. So, and we'll definitely yes. It even mentions you, Braden, that welcome to the family. Keep up the amazing work.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So.
Thank you.
And I'll say it because Katie's not here. We're still almost perfect.
Almost. We have those mysterious 2 1-star reviews, which I don't know what happened, but
People do that.
yep,
Could be bots.
Man.
could be. So, but again, folks, we always appreciate reviews. We always appreciate fan feedback. So, yeah, it's very well taken. You made me smile every time I see a new one.
Totally.
So.
Yeah.
So, for the record, you can find us on recorderonthewall.com. Our Twitter is at ROTWPOD. Our Gmail is rotwpod@gmail.com. When I can remember to go on Redwall forums and post there, I do. And I try to be semi-active on our particular Twitter. You can find us on all major podcasting services. Certainly Apple Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts, Spotify, and any of the other little guys who likes to just harvest our RSS feed for episodes, because they do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can always go to our website directly to download episodes there.
No one does that.
I mean, there's a reason I wrote into the website code an audio player. The generic HTML5 audio player. You can play right from the website.
Yeah, I was being facetious. I'm sure someone does.
Yeah, I know. So. Okay. So, next time, we will eventually get to Act 1. I'm actually going to jump to Autumn Food, and we'll return to Act 1. When hopefully, my computer's not misbehaving. Hopefully.
Time will tell.
Yeah. All right. So, that means I'm Papa Abbott Pete, and I've got to go corral my 2 kids here who rented a video game and aren't playing nice.
My turn, me.
No, still my turn.
Yeah, you'll never catch me. Ah!
Ah!
Yeah, they're fine.
I'll hurt you.
Ah!